He said it like a joke. That was the thing about Cole Whitmore. He said most things like jokes because it was easier than saying them like the truth. He was standing at the edge of the Harlan's Creek trading post on a Thursday afternoon in September 1884, leaning on a post that needed replacing, watching the dust settle from the stage that had just pulled out, and he said it to no one in particular. Too pretty for this frontier, he said, loud enough to be heard, aimed at the woman who had stepped off the stage 10 minutes ago and was now standing in the road with a trunk at her feet, looking at the town of Harlan's Creek the way you look at something when you have been told one thing about it and arrived to find another. The town of Harlan's Creek in 1884 was 63 people, one street, a trading post, a livery, a church that doubled as a schoolroom, and a saloon that nobody called a saloon because the pastor's wife had asked them not to. It had 2 mud seasons and 1 dry one. It was not, by most measures, a beautiful place. The woman did not laugh. She turned and looked at him. She had brown eyes and a traveling coat that had been good quality once and had been worn hard since. She was perhaps 28. She looked at him the way a woman looks at a man when she has heard that particular kind of joke before and has decided, long ago, exactly how much of her time it deserves. She said, "Then take me somewhere better. Not angry, not flirtatious, just direct, like a woman who meant it." Cole straightened up from the post. He had not expected that. He was 32 years old, and he had said a lot of things in his life, and most of them had landed more or less where he aimed them. This one had come back, he said. "I would if I knew anywhere better." She picked up the smaller of her bags and walked past him into the trading post, and the door swung closed behind her, and Cole stood in the September dust and thought about what had just happened. What had just happened was this. A woman had stepped off the stage in Harlan's Creek and said 5 words that Cole Whitmore would not stop thinking about for the next 4 months. I want to tell you her name. It was Nora Vale. She had come from St. Louis, which was not the nearest city or the most practical one to come from, but it was where she had been. She had a letter in her coat pocket from a cousin named Delia, who had written in the spring, "Come west. There is work here and the air is better, and I am lonely, Nora, and I think you might be too." Nora Vale was not a woman who admitted to loneliness easily, but she had come. Delia Marsh was Nora's mother's sister's daughter, which made them cousins in the way that frontier families counted cousins. Close enough to mean something, far enough that they had not seen each other in 6 years. Delia had married a man named Frank Marsh, who ran the trading post. Frank was a solid, quiet man who had been in Harlan's Creek for 8 years and had built the post from a single room into a 3-room operation with a back storehouse and a small attached residence where he and Delia lived with their 2 boys. He was decent to Nora from the first day. He showed her where things were and asked what she could do and, when she told him, put her to work without ceremony. What Nora could do was keep accounts, manage inventory, speak plainly to difficult customers, and it turned out, make bread that people came from 2 miles away to buy on Saturdays. This last one surprised her. She had been making bread her whole life without it meaning anything particular. In Harlan's Creek, it meant that by her 3rd Saturday, 6 people had come to the post specifically and only for the bread, and Frank had looked at her with a new quality of respect that he expressed by not saying anything, which was how Frank expressed most things. The town received her the way small frontier towns receive women who arrive without husbands and without obvious tragedy, with a mixture of caution and curiosity that does not resolve quickly. The pastor's wife, Mrs. Hartley, came to introduce herself the first Sunday and ask, in the gentle manner of a woman who means the question directly, whether Nora was looking for permanence or passing through. Nora said she had not decided yet, which was the true answer and the one that Mrs. Hartley wrote in her mental ledger under "Uncertain Watch." The men of Harlan's Creek were aware of Nora in the peripheral way that men in small, Frontier towns are aware of any unmarried woman, not individually, not with any great specificity, but as a fact about the town's population that registered and was noted. Most of them were polite. 2 of them were forward in a way she redirected once firmly and did not need to address again. Cole Whitmore was neither. Cole was, in the way of Harlan's Creek, a known quantity. He had been in the valley for 4 years, working the Hadley cattle operation, which was the largest employer in the county. He was good at his work and easy to get along with, and he had a quality that the other hands called lucky, meaning things tended to work out for him in the field, in ways that had more to do with patience and reading conditions than with luck, but lucky was what they called it, because it was shorter. He was not the foreman. He did not want to be. He came into the trading post on the Monday after Nora arrived, needing new rope and a tin of lamp oil, and he found her behind the counter doing the week's accounts. In a ledger she had apparently reorganized over the weekend, because the ledger looked nothing like it had on Friday. He set the rope on the counter. He said, "Morning," she said. "Good morning." Without looking up, he said, "You moved the ledger system." "It was wrong," she said. He said, "For Frank has been using it for 8 years." She looked up then. She said, "For 8 years it has been adding the supply orders to the sales column and calling it profit. It is not profit. It is a record of everything the post has spent and called it income. And the fact that Frank has not noticed is either because he trusts the system or because he does not look at it closely, and either way it needed to be corrected." Cole stood at the counter for a moment. He said, "How bad is it?" She said, "Not catastrophic, correctable." "I have already corrected it," he said. "Does Frank know? I told him this morning." He sat down and was quiet for a while, and then he said, "Thank you." He seemed relieved, actually. I think he knew something was not right for a long time and did not want to look at it. Cole picked up his rope. He looked at her for a moment with the same expression he'd had on the street on Thursday, but different now, more specific, less easy. He said, "I'm Cole Whitmore," she said. "I know. You're the one who said I was too pretty for this place," he said. "I meant it as a compliment," she said. "I know what you meant it as." She went back to the ledger. "The lamp oil is on the back shelf." He got the lamp oil, he paid, he left. He came back on Wednesday for no reason he could later explain to himself satisfactorily. "Here is what I want you to understand about how things happened between Cole Whitmore and Nora Vale." It was not fast. Nothing about it was fast. The frontier in 1884 did not move fast in the ways that mattered, and neither did the people who had learned its rhythms. The cattle work set Cole's calendar, and the post set Nora's, and the 2 calendars overlapped at the trading post 2 or 3 times a week. And in those overlaps over the course of October and November, something built that neither of them named. He started telling her things, small things at first, which pastures the Hadley herd had been moved to, what the weather was doing on the North Ridge, what the old hands said about the winter coming. She listened the way she listened to everything, fully and without performance. She asked questions that told him she had been paying attention to the answers from before. She started telling him things back. About St. Louis, which she described without romance. A city that had been good to her in some years and not in others, and that she had left not because she hated it, but because she had stayed long enough to understand that staying was a choice, not a default, and she was not sure the choice was still the right one. "What made you not sure?" he asked her once, on a Wednesday afternoon in October, when the post was quiet and the first hard frost of the season had kept most of the town inside. She thought about it. She said, "I had good work, I had a room I liked, I had 2 friends I trusted and a Sunday routine I was comfortable in. And one morning I woke up and I thought, is this it? Not sadly, just as a question. And I did not have a good answer, and that bothered me more than the question did." Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What did you want the answer to be?" She looked at him. "Something that surprised me," she said. "Something I had not arranged in advance." He did not say anything to that. But he thought about it for a long time afterward. The Saturday bread had become a real thing by October. 8 people, then 12. Then one Saturday, Nora looked up and counted 16 customers who had come to the post between 7 and 9 in the morning for bread and nothing. She mentioned this to Frank. He said, "I know." She said, "We should charge more." Frank looked at her with the expression of a man who had known this for 3 weeks and had been waiting for someone with more confidence than him to say it out loud. Cole was one of the 16. He came every Saturday and bought 1 loaf, and sometimes ate half of it on the walk back to the bunkhouse, which was a 20-minute walk and not the most practical way to consume a loaf of bread. She noticed this and said nothing about it. He noticed that she noticed and said nothing about that either. There was a night in October, a Friday, when the temperature dropped fast and the wind came up from the northwest, and Frank and Delia's older boy, Thomas, went out to close the barn and did not come back in a reasonable time. And Nora went out after him and found him with a lantern that had blown out and a barn door he could not get latched against the wind. She held the lantern and got it lit again, and the two of them managed the door together, and she came back inside with frost in her hair and her coat soaked from the rain that had started, and Delia made her sit by the stove. Cole came in 2 hours later to buy something he needed from the post's evening stock, and found Nora by the stove in dry clothes with a cup of tea, and Thomas sitting beside her while she told him something about a storm in St. Louis that had apparently been much worse and considerably more interesting than the current one. Thomas was 8 years old, and he was listening with his whole body, the way children listen when they have forgotten they are listening. Cole bought what he needed and left. At the door he stopped and said to Nora, "You all right?" she said. "I am perfectly fine," he said. "Good," and left. Outside in the cold and rain, he stood at the edge of the post's porch for a moment, not quite ready to walk back into the dark. He had been in Harlan's Creek for 4 years, and he had not, in 4 years, once stood outside in the cold, being not quite ready to go back to where he had come from. He was aware of this. In November, a man named Davies came through Harlan's Creek. He was perhaps 45, well-dressed for a frontier town, selling land options for parcels in the valley south of the Hadley Range. He had the particular charm of a man who sells things for a living. Warm, easy, calibrated to what the room wanted to hear. He spoke to Nora for a long time on the Thursday he passed through. Cole was in the post when it started. He left. He came back an hour later and Davies was still there, and Nora was listening to him with her head tilted slightly in the way she tilted it when she was deciding something. Cole bought a tin of coffee he did not need and left again. The following morning, Friday, Nora was at the counter when he came in. He said, without building up to it, "That man yesterday, Davies, what did he want?" She looked at him. Something in her expression shifted slightly. She said, "He wanted to show me a property south of the valley. He thought I might be interested in establishing something. A small bakery, possibly, or a goods operation of my own." Cole said, "Are you," she said, "interested in the property, in staying?" She looked at him for a moment. She said, "I have not decided yet." He nodded. He bought the coffee he had not needed. He left. He did not sleep well that night, which was unusual for a man who worked cattle 12 hours a day and slept like a post. The first real snow came on a Tuesday night in the 3rd week of November. It came while people were still awake, which was unusual, and it came fast and quiet the way the first snow sometimes does, without the wind that usually precedes it. Nora was closing the post. She had sent Delia to bed 2 hours earlier because Delia had been fighting a cold since Sunday, and Frank was in the back doing inventory by lamp, and Nora was at the front windows locking the shutters when she saw the snow start. She stopped. She stood at the window for a moment. She had not seen the first snow of a Montana winter before. She had seen St. Louis snow, which was a different thing entirely. Gray and heavy and urban, the kind of snow that turns to slush by morning and gets in your boots. This snow was white and clean, and it was falling in the dark on a landscape that had been raw, brown, and frost-stiff an hour ago, and was now becoming something else. She put on her coat and went outside, just to stand in it for a minute. Cole was coming across the street. He was heading for the saloon, she assumed, or back to the bunkhouse, though the bunkhouse was in the other direction. He saw her standing front of the post with her face up, and he stopped. She said, "I have never seen it like this," he said. "Like what?" she said, clean still, like it means something. He stood beside her, not close, the appropriate distance of two people who have been talking for 2 months, and have not yet said the thing underneath all of the talking. After a while he said, "Davies is coming back on Friday." She was quiet. He said, "I know because he told Hadley he was interested in the South Pasture lease, and Hadley told me this morning. He is going to come back through, and he is going to ask you again," she said. "I know." Cole was quiet for a moment. The snow was still coming down. Soft and steady, he said. "Are you going to say yes?" she said. "That depends on what?" She turned and looked at him. The snow was in her hair again, the same as the night with the barn, and she looked at him with the same directness she had had on the first day, when she had said 5 words that he had not expected. She said, "On whether there is a reason to stay that does not involve Davies's property." Cole looked at her. He said, "I told you that Thursday in September, that you were too pretty for this frontier," she said. "Yes." "I said it like a joke," he said. "I know." "It wasn't," he said. "It was the worst kind of true thing. The kind you say sideways because saying it straight feels like too much." She was very still, he said. "I am not a man with a lot to offer in the way of property or prospects. I have a good horse and 4 years of work, and the Hadley operation will be mine to run in another 3 if Hadley keeps his word, which he will. That is what I have. That is the honest amount of it." She said nothing. She was listening in the way she listened when she was deciding. He said, "You asked me that first day to take you somewhere better. I have been thinking about that for 4 months. I do not think I can take you to a better place than this one. But I think I could make this place better for you than it is right now, if you would let me try. That is what I am saying. That is all I am saying." The snow fell. The street was empty and white and quiet. Noravelle stood in the first snow of her first Montana winter, and she looked at Cole Whitmore, and she thought about a morning in St. Louis, when she had asked herself whether this was it, and had wanted an answer that surprised her. She said, "Ask me properly, then," he said. "I am going to need a little time to do that properly," she said. "You have until Friday." He almost smiled. She could tell by the corner of his mouth. She went inside. He stood in the snow for a while, alone. Then he went back to the bunkhouse and sat on the edge of his bunk and thought very carefully about what properly meant. He went to Frank on Wednesday morning, before the post opened. Frank was in the back as usual. Cole knocked on the open door, and Frank looked up, and Cole said, "I want to speak to you about Nora." Frank set down the thing he was holding. He looked at Cole the way a man looks at another man when he has been waiting for this conversation for approximately 6 weeks. He said, "I wondered when you were going to get around to it." Cole said, "I am getting around to it now." Frank said, "What are you asking me?" Cole said, "I am asking if you have any objection to me courting her properly with your knowledge, given that she is living under your roof and working in your post, and you are the closest thing she has to a family in this valley." Frank considered this for a moment. He was not a man who spoke before he was ready to, which was one of the things Cole had always respected about him. Frank said, "Does she know you are asking me this?" Cole said, "No. She told me to ask her properly. This is part of properly." Frank nodded slowly. He said, "I have no objection. I'll tell you what I told myself the week she came. She is not a woman who needs anyone to manage her decisions. She is a woman who makes her own and makes them well. So if she has given you until Friday, you had better have something worth saying by Friday." Cole said, "That is what I am working on." Frank said, "Good." He picked up what he had been holding. "You want coffee?" Cole said, "No, thank you." He left and spent the rest of Wednesday at the Hadley operation, doing his work, which he did with the same patience and steadiness he brought to everything. And in the quieter hours of the afternoon, he worked out what he was going to say. Not a speech. He was not a speech-making man. Just the honest thing, said plainly, without jokes. On Thursday evening, after the post was closed, and Delia and Frank had gone inside and the town was settling toward night, he knocked on the post's side door. Nora answered. She had been reading. She had a book in her left hand, and she looked at him in the lamplight from the interior and said, "It is Thursday," he said. "I know. I came early." She considered him. She stepped back and let him in. They sat at the small table in the back room where Frank did the accounts, because it was the only table, and Nora set the book down and waited. Cole said, "I talked to Frank," she said. "I know. He told me this afternoon." He said, "Was that all right?" She said, "It was more than all right. It was the right thing to do." He put his hands on the table, and he looked at them for a moment, and then he looked at her. He said, "Nora, I am not going to say you are too pretty for this frontier again, because I know now that it is not the right thing to say. What I should have said that first day, if I had been thinking clearly, is that this frontier is lucky you came to it. And I think I am lucky too, if you will allow me to say so." She was very still. He said, "I would like to court you properly. I would like to take my time about it and do it right. I would like, at the end of it, to ask you a question that I think you already know is coming, and I would like you to have all the time you need before you answer it. That is what I want. That is the whole of it." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Cole Whitmore, you came one day early. You went to Frank before you came to me, and you said everything clearly and without a single joke. I think that might be the most properly anyone has ever done anything on my behalf." He said, "I was told to do it properly." "You were," she said. "You did." She reached across the table and set her hand over his for a moment. Just a moment. Then she took it back. She said, "You can stay for coffee." He stayed for 2 hours. Frank came and went once, saw the situation, and went back without comment. Delia, who had heard most of it through the thin wall, told her friend Mrs. Hartley about it the following morning and said, "I have never seen that man so careful with anything in his life, and he is a careful man to begin with." Mrs. Hartley wrote in her mental ledger, "Permanent. Decided. Davies came on Friday. He was pleasant and well-dressed, and he made his case with the same warm efficiency he always used." Nora listened to him politely. She said, "I appreciate it. I have decided to stay in Harlan's Creek." Davies asked if there was a particular reason. She said, "Several." He took her answer graciously and moved on to the next stop on his route. Cole heard about it from Frank by noon. He came into the post that afternoon, unhurried, and stood at the counter, and Nora looked up from the ledger. He said, "I heard Davies came through." She said, "He did," he said, and she said, "I told him I was staying." Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Good. Just that. Not relief or triumph or any of the things a man might perform in that moment. Just good." The word of a man who had said what he meant on a Thursday evening, and was now receiving the answer, and was trying to receive it with the same steadiness he had put into asking. Nora smiled. It was not a large smile, but it was the first full one he had seen from her, and it was aimed directly at him, and it was the kind of smile that tells you something is beginning. Cole Whitmore and Nora Vale were married the following June in the Harlan's Creek Church on a Saturday morning. Frank gave her away. Delia cried. Thomas, who was 9 by then, stood in the front row and was very still and good. The Hadley operation came to Cole 2 years later, as promised. Nora kept the accounts for both the ranch and the post. She kept the Saturday bread. She kept the brown traveling coat, repaired and worn until it finally gave out, because she said it had gotten her to the right place, and she was not going to throw away something that had done its job that well. Cole, for the rest of his life, called her too pretty for the frontier whenever she was having a hard week. She always answered the same way. Not the whispered version of that first day. A different one, she said. Good thing I found somewhere better. He said that was not what she had originally meant. She said she knew. She had revised her position.